Before we dive into our great conversation today, wanted to give a shout out to Dre Reed Spooky and Brooklyn Attic Books. In June, anyone that is in New York City or would be willing to travel, June 20th from 12 to 5 p.m. is the New York City Pride Indie Horror Book Fair. Over 30 LGBTQ plus authors, publishers, vendors will gather at TVI in Ridgewood's Queens, which is just steps off the L train. Come celebrate Pride Month with your literary horror besties. Festivities will include drag performances, movie screenings, carnival games, and raffle prizes. Food served by the award winning Luther's New York City, famous fried chicken sandwiches, and photo ops in TVI's infamous Room 237, the Shining themed lounge. There will also be an after party at the amazing bookstore Twisted Spine with readings from a few of the authors that will be attending the fair. This is hosted by friend of the pod, Dre Reed Spooky, and tickets are only $5. So make sure you're following Dre Reed Spooky and Brooklyn Attic Books. Click on the link in their bios to get your tickets.
Hello and welcome to Horrifically Well Read, Bled, and Said. It is my pleasure to be recording solo tonight while my partner is at parent teacher conferences. But I get the supreme pleasure of talking to one of my favorite authors, and hopefully yours too by the end of this, is Christa Carmen. You would probably know her because she wrote a fantastic book that came out at the end of fourth quarter last year, How to Fake a Haunting. And then she also has The Daughters of Block Island, to which both I read and a few other things. But welcome to the show, Krista. We're going to get into it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yes. So I would love to just touch on a little bit of, I love female horror authors or thriller and it just kind of how it's gone through. I feel like you have such a signature style for what you write about. But I want to hear a little bit like back us up of how did you get into writing? What kind of experiences did you have, and just anywhere that goes that you can share, like that started getting you this style of influence of knowing that you wanted to write about these experiences in your books.
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's a little bit like just, how did you start? But I like that you brought in how did you start writing these type of books because I do think that's very intertwined for a lot of people and definitely for me. I mean, to not go like too deep with it, but
Take your time. Do what you need to do.
all right, cool. I was always kind of a lover of spooky books even as a kid. I was always like Bunnicula, Goosebumps, making my way to Fear Street. And it's funny because even like the other series, like I had a child, my gosh, at this point almost 6 years ago. But 6 years ago when I went over to my parents' house and dug through their basement and all the books of mine that they had kept for me, even like the quote unquote normie series, like the Babysitter's Club, all the ones that I had wanted to keep were like the spooky ones. It was like the spooky Nancy Drews and the spooky Babysitter's Club and, anything that had like a ghost or a, supernatural bent to it.
Love that. I love that you brought up Bunnicula. Like, I feel like
So
that was
good.
my very first one that I just was like, I love that book. I was just drawn to it. I mean, it was
It's so
so
good. I
exciting.
mean,
It was
it's,
so
like,
exciting.
genuinely, like, creepy for a kid to
Yes.
it's like a good
Yes.
first taste of
Yes.
true, dread and
Yes.
unnerving situations.
It was a book that I genuinely learned how to read off of. Like, it encouraged me, like, when my mom would be like, "You need to read for X amount of time," it wasn't work.
Yeah, no, I reread it, like, recently, and I was like, "Oh, this still holds up."
Well, now there's, like, how many renditions of it? Because I remember I even bought it for I have a 23-year-old, and I remember buying it for her when she was in, like, 2nd or 3rd grade, but I think there's more iterations now, right?
Yeah, I think there's, like, 6 books in the main series, but there are, like I have a couple. They're like picture books almost, but they're long picture books, so there was quite a few things that, like, the Bunnicula universe branched out into.
Now I have another question. Were
Yes.
you a fan of Hansel and Gretel?
Like, just the story in general or one particular
In
version?
general, because I just got the picture when you said picture book, long story picture book, when I was in Salem in September, I got the Stephen King written
The
one
Maurice
and the one
Sendak?
I just have it up on my bookshelves, but that was like that was my first time where I'm like, "I love this creepy story." It was so scary to me as a kid, but I was like, "Tell it to me again."
Yes, yes, oh my god. Yes, I was a fan of any creepy fairy tale, any creepy anything, legends, lore. So this kind of leads me, right? So another book that was in my parents' basement was this like Rhode Island legend, vampire legends and lore of Rhode Island. So I think that there was always this kind of like interest in local kind of ghost story, legend, lore, folklore. But for the longest time, I was just a reader for a long time. And then kind of like in high school and college, I was very much a sort of like I want to say like I kept journals, but they were very much like kind of like writing, like very Susanna Kaysen, like
Mm.
Girl Interrupted. Like, it was very much teenaged main character energy. Like my journals are worthy of, a memoir when they were totally hilarious and not even a little bit. But I did a lot of writing in that sense where like I was always keeping notebooks and jotting down things and ideas, but never with the intent of publishing until about, I guess, like 12 years ago now. I started actually writing with maybe the intent to send some stuff out. And I just instantly, like the first time I sat down and wrote a short story, I was like, I'm going to write a short story like The Lottery, right? Like, got to aim high.
Like,
I'm going to start with Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. Like, that's my.
that's okay though. I mean, I feel like I just heard Robbie Dornan was just saying how he's like, "Why wouldn't I believe that I'm the best?" Like,
Well,
you
I
need to
mean, you
have
got to
the
start
best.
somewhere. You got to have that
Yeah, and he's like,
confidence.
Of course I'm gonna believe him." And I just like he does a much better job of telling the story for why he thinks that. But I love that. I mean, it's like I think looking at aspirational, like I can do this, I want to do this. I think it's also I say it was maybe Tana Reeve too. That was like you just got to start writing because you think you're writing great, and then once you actually start writing a lot, you realize you're not writing great. But it takes that process of like to whittle it out of you to realize, oh, I have so much to learn. But I mean,
Yeah,
we
like if
wouldn't
you
have your
knew
books if you didn't
how.
have this belief in yourself. So I'm glad that you
Right.
followed it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. It's like you have to kind of be in a little bit of denial as to your lack of talent when you first start out, just so that you keep going. Because if, it's like if
Gotta
you had
use a
somebody
little,
looking over your shoulder on that
yeah,
very first story, I'd be like,
yeah.
oh, keep your day
You gotta have a
job.
little Delulu to get
Yes.
you
Yeah.
started. I love it. I love it. Okay, so after you wrote the superb lottery style story, then did you move forward from that into like novels or what was the next step?
So I wrote one novel early on, and I I didn't kind of like we were just talking about a little bit where I kind of had too much confidence in that. I was like, oh, like I wrote this novel and it's really great. And I'm going to go out and like look for an agent. And so I spent a lot. I mean, I say this a bit self deprecatingly, but, it's all part of the process, right? I think it was everything that I've done, I feel like has been the right thing at the time because it's how I went on this long, strange path. So, I went through the process of querying agents and got some feedback here and there but got no bites and didn't get any further than that and even sent it out to some indie publishers that didn't need agent representation and I got like a few lukewarm and I did get one kind of indie publisher. It wasn't even really an indie. It was sort of like hybrid vanity press almost. It was like a little bit sketchy, not super vanity press complete, but it would not have been the way to put out a debut novel by any stretch of the imagination for me. And I kind of I'm very happy that I had the wherewithal. And I didn't even have to have other people tell me this. I just kind of sat back and I thought, all right, you queried 80 agents and like 20 publishers. And out of all that, this one kind of sketch one is telling you, oh, like, oh, yeah, we'll publish this. Maybe, maybe this isn't what you want to like get out the gate with. And I took a step back and I trunked it. And then I just concentrated solely on writing short fiction for a few years. I wrote nothing but short fiction, sent it out all over the place, started getting feedback, started getting like editor you get the first you get the form rejections, then you get the personal rejections. Um, and then I ended up putting out a short story collection when I think at this point I had like dabbled in a few more novels. I had a few other kind of unfinished manuscripts. And then in about 2019 maybe, I really was like, okay, I think I'm ready. I spent about 5 years kind of like not really pursuing novel writing as much as I am now. So yeah, and then I started, I wrote a complete manuscript and did it like the right way where I, wrote the draft and then edited some more and rewrote and had beta readers, and I was in an MFA program, and did critique groups, and then I did get a went out and queried agents and was able to get the agent that I have now with that first book. But that's not the book that I ended up publishing as my debut. That was not Daughters of Black Island. We weren't able to sell that anywhere. So, went back to the drawing board and wrote Daughters of Black Island.
So, a couple of themes that I want to pick out here is one, I love your level of self awareness that when you sent it out to, you said 80 and then 20, like 100, not getting what you needed, just that you're like, maybe it's me. And
Right.
I don't know that everyone can do that. I think that's awesome because taking that cue from yourself and saying, okay, what do I need to change? And not stopping your overall creative process, but transitioning into something short and still fulfilling. And then when you said you are ready to go through the process, I love how you're like, I'm going to approach this completely differently. So,
Mhm.
one of the things as you were talking and sharing about your initial process, my brain was thinking, well, what would you tell the people to do differently? But I think you answered it as you went on of saying, you have to do some of these structures are in place for your own good, both writing out the manuscript, editing, having the beta readers, working through some of these things. That not that you have to necessarily do a fine arts program, but I mean, all of these
Yeah,
things are here
right.
to provide structure and support. And then I love that even though that wasn't what you were going to put out, or you didn't end up putting out as the debut, that you stuck with the endurance of, I'm doing this. So, did you feel like you had had such a positive experience from doing it a new way that you were like, "I'm not giving up"? Like, I wanna know how you ended up going from that novel that you didn't with that agent to now getting to Daughters of Block Island. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of almost obnoxiously persevering. Like,
I
I
love that.
don't like
I
to
do.
be told. Like, I mean, it really does seem like such an obnoxious answer to be like, "I don't accept failure and I just but, like, I think maybe if it were something that I didn't love as much as I love this, or maybe let me say that a different way. If it were something that I was willing to give up on, having, gotten a couple quote unquote failures, then maybe that's an indication that like it's not something that you're as passionate about. It's like when I what was like trying to think of like something, like you try a sport in high school, and you're not very good at it, but it kind of doesn't matter. And then the more you think about it, you're just like, yeah, I think it doesn't matter because like I don't really care about this. But for me, I, care a lot about writing. I love doing it. I love everything that goes along with it. And so again, like a super like
No,
just
I think that's
obnoxious answer,
so
but like I don't take
no, it's
failure as failure. I
no,
just take it as like like I'm like, okay, well then I'm gonna
yeah.
do better next time.
So, that is such a level of tenacity and grit. Like, there's a nonfiction book by Angela Duckworth called Grit, and I always think back to it, and it's not like she talks about everyone from professional sports players to Olympians or, people that have gotten wherever they wanted. And there is an initial level of talent. Like you have to
Mm,
have a propensity to be good at something. But she talks about like one of the things was like Katie Ledecky, who has won the medals and things like that, and how she actually, every time they would introduce something new in practice, she was always like one of the last people,
mm,
as they would try something new. But what separated her was that kind of what you're saying, didn't accept failure, that she would come back in and she would change her practices and she would work so hard to be like, this is where I want to be, this is what I want to do. So that by the next time and it came around that she was leading the pack. She was one of the first ones. And it was that level of I know what that I want this for myself and this where I see myself. So anybody who needs a book like that of just
That's a
digging into
great suggestion.
the
I've
grit.
seen that
Yeah,
book
because
everywhere. I've never actually read it.
it's so good. Like, I think about it all the time because, I mean, it doesn't matter what you've done, but it shows, like, yes, there is an initial amount of talent. Like, you're not wrong, but it is not talent that gets you the success that you think it is. And I think you're living proof of that with what you're just describing. And I also think that if Adam were here and sharing, he's said it before as a writer himself, where he's like, writing is like breathing to me. I have to do it.
Mm.
And he's like, if I'm not doing it, I'm not happy. And, when you go through periods, so it feels to me like that's what you're saying is like, it's not just like a choice. It's like part of who you are. And it had to come out, but you certainly did not have to be that persistent to say, I'm going to keep trying. So that to me is very inspirational, like,
Yeah,
and
well, thank
important.
you.
Yeah. And the fact that selfishly, I really liked your book. So I'm glad you just kept up with
It's
it.
always a
So
plus.
yeah, I remember distinctly browsing on Kindle Unlimited and coming across The Daughters of Block Island, and I was like, "What an evocative cover." I was like,
Mm.
"I'm definitely reading this." And I've always loved things that are set, like, more in the South and off of, like, the coast and, like, the Carolinas and just down and through there, and so I didn't know anything about you, and in fact, when I had then I had subsequently found later on the How to Fake Haunting, and I was
Mm.
like, "This looks amazing." I didn't connect at first that you were the same author for
Oh,
both, but
that's
I
funny.
think yeah, but I think that that cover was also very evocative. So shout out to whoever's making that because I think
Oh,
it
nice.
does play a
Thank you.
huge part in you do judge a book by its cover a little bit
Yeah,
of,
it's gotta
I
catch your
think this is a
attention
right
for
feel
sure.
for me. Yeah, and so I felt like the cover matched what I was hoping to read inside.
Nice.
Yes. So I always ask, like, if you could lightly pitch. I mean, if you're not comfortable, it doesn't have to be anything formal, but how would you describe Daughters of Block Island? I want to go through that one first, just because we're kind of going sequentially here through, and then we'll work our way up to How to Fake a Haunting. But I think these are both books that our readers would and our listeners should be reading for female horror and empowerment and rage and any of these other
Oh, thank
things
you.
of so
I
yeah,
love
I
that.
think I think that we should take our time to go through both. So tell me how you would define or pitch Block Daughters of Block Island to someone who hasn't heard of it yet and should add it to their TBR.
Yeah, absolutely, and I will say I also have there is a second novel in between those 2.
Okay, tell me.
So we can get to that. We'll go
Okay,
sequentially, like
okay,
you said. I
okay.
just
All
wanted
right,
to
you
make
can tell me
sure I
on that one
didn't.
too. Okay.
Yeah. Daughters of Block Island is about a woman she's knows that she has a birth mother. She finds out that she has a birth mother on Block Island. And I'm sorry. It's been so long since I talked about this book. I'm totally
I
botching it. Let
know.
me start again.
You
She
start again.
finds out that she finds her adopted sister, and
Yes.
through her adopted sister, she realizes that her birth mother is still on Block Island, and she goes to the island to try to figure out why she was put up for adoption and her sister was not. And in doing so, she kind of starts to unravel this whole really centuries old mystery with like some history to the house, and it worked well with Block Island being like a very isolated community where there could be some like generational things going on. But it's essentially like a gothic story, and I leaned
Definitely.
very hard into those tropes to the point where I actually kind of turned it into a meta gothic, because when I was writing it, I was like, I've always wanted to write a gothic horror novel, but it's been done so many times that you kinda can't just stick your stuff into the formula and hope that readers are gonna find something new with it. So I played with the idea of Blake, the sort of
Mhm,
part 1 of the book main
mhm.
character. There's Blake and then there's Talia, her sister. She is very shaky in early recovery from substance abuse, and she jokingly at first starts to feel like she's in a gothic novel because the setting and the mansion that she's staying in, she stays at a B&B while looking into her birth mother, and it's this, big gothic mansion on the coast, and she feels like she's in a gothic novel, and there's somebody on the island that wants to keep the secret of her, whole birth and her having left the island. He wants to keep that a secret. And so when he realizes how shaky she is in her recovery, and then she's got this like kind of bonkers idea, that she might be in a gothic novel and it's kind of joking, but it's exploited,
Mm.
and then things sort of spiral, and it's actually a sometimes I feel like people might get upset when I say this, but it's on the back cover of the book and it's not actually a spoiler. Blake is not the heroine of this gothic novel. She dies in like sort of the first third of the book. And then the book is turned over to Talia, who has to figure out why this adopted sister that she never knew came to Block Island and ended up dead. And then the book, goes from there from Talia's perspective.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that because it was like, "Oh, shit, like, now what? Now who is this? Now where are we
I
going?" So I
know.
really love that, and I feel like the themes in this book were I just made some notes here, but isolation, legacy, privilege, and danger,
Mhm.
of and, you mentioned the MFA program, like, is that something that you really learned how to, like, tease out? Because I feel like you could really feel the isolation was palpable, throughout the entire thing, and then also, the privilege, but also the like, just how long-standing things were, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about
Yeah, so not to knock my MFA at all, but I actually
that.
think the one of the things that I came to the MFA with was a strong sense of setting. It was something that I had included and done a lot with in my short fiction. So I ended up kind of working on more characterization and plot and story structure and those sorts of things while at the MFA. And yes, setting to me has always been really, really important. And I don't really know why, because I mean, I'm from Rhode Island. I grew up here. And when I graduated high school, I really wanted to put my hometown, my home state in the rearview mirror. Like, I went to school in Philadelphia. I moved to LA from Philly, stayed in LA a little bit, ended up coming back and living in Boston for 6 years. And when I moved back to Rhode Island, it was not something that I had expected. I sort of, like, ended up back here in my hometown and was super bummed out about it and was like, "Oh, man, like, this was not in the plan."
Uh,
Um and right around that same time, it just happened to be that that's when I started writing more seriously. And I don't know if it was like some sort of defense mechanism of like, well, gotta make the best of it. Like, I'm here, might as well use Rhode Island as a setting. But I think what it ended up turning out to be was that I was just this dumb kid that kind of thought that, like, you don't make it in the world unless you, like, leave your hometown in your rearview mirror. Like, you gotta go out and, make something of yourself outside of the place you grew up. And that's all well and good. And that, I'm certainly for people leaving their hometown or seeing the world or whatever. But I do think it speaks to like a little bit of immaturity in that I didn't see like, there are a lot of really cool things about my hometown, Rhode Island in general, and New England, and I think for the types of things I like to write, it just ended up being a great fit, and I just kind of ran with it, and I continue to run with it. I'm working on something right now set in Rhode Island
I
again.
love it. I love it. Well, I feel like so when I said, like, in the Carolinas, I've done a lot of stuff down there, but at that point, like, I had never really done any of the northern beaches beyond, like,
Mm,
I guess I would just say, like, Ocean City, New Jersey. I
okay.
hadn't never gone higher up, and so even though I started the book thinking, "Oh, this must be in this area," it was a nice, I guess what I'd say, change of pace or just so the other thing is I'm laughing because I always wanted to leave my hometown. I left for, like, maybe 6 months, which was, like, maybe an hour and a half away, and then I met Adam, and I was like, "Great, we're getting married," and so we just came right back to where and then I lived in just, like, another small town, and we looked and looked and looked for a house for, like, 2 years after we were living in this one town for 13 years, and I literally ended up with a house back on my bus route, my elementary bus route.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, "Man," and now when we show up here's my little side note, my youngest daughter is playing violin and clarinet. When I tell you I entered my own horror story the other day by having to go back to they have it all at the high school, like the auditorium or where they have these performances, the number of boyfriends and their wives and their mothers, and I was just like, "No, no, what are you all doing here? Wait, we all had kids at the same time." Like, I'm just like I didn't have to experience that with my older daughter because we were in a different school district, and Adam was just kinda like, "Just breathe. It's gonna be okay."
That's
But
so
I'm like,
funny.
it was shit. It was absolute and then just even the other day, she was like, "Oh, I'm talking to this kid, blah, blah, blah," and I was like she's like, "Why'd you look at me like that?" I'm like, "No, no reason. I'm just paying attention to your story. Like, just nope, just listening to you." So, I'm not trying to ruin her stuff with my, but that's it. It's like,
Right.
man, I really, but I love that when you came back that you start to have an appreciation. And I feel like I've had some of that similarly too of like, okay, we don't get pounded by weather in certain ways. And actually there's a lot of really pretty state parks and there's a lot of things that I used to, just that, you feel like you've got to get out and go make something. So I totally hear that. But I love that you're just kind of digging in and embracing that now and finding more
Yeah.
things. So that's awesome.
When we were like, I've had this conversation before about this exact thing, but for whatever reason this time it makes me think of that quote at the end of The Wizard of Oz where Dorothy's like, "I went looking for my heart's desire and it was in my backyard all along." I just butchered it. It's a little bit
Isn't that
different than that,
amazing though?
but
That is really true. I think that is for a lot of things. I often feel that way, and sometimes Adam is like he knows me well enough now because we'll be married for 20 years in
wow.
April, but
Congrats. Early anniversary. Congrats.
we've been together longer than that, but he knows that, like, I have to really go from I'll be like, "I need to do this," and then I have to go from the the complete opposite side and then come back again. So, as an example, last summer, I was like, "I think I wanna move. I think I wanna look for a job."
Mm.
And I got so far in the job process that they were like, "Can you come visit? We're gonna talk about your relocation package and whatever."
Oh
And I was
god.
like, "My god, my flowers are so beautiful. My grass has never been so green and my home." And it was like, whoa, all of a sudden it like came into and so I was like,
Yeah.
"I don't think I can do it." But, it was like, okay, I finally need to make this, and I felt like I was so good, and I'm proud of you that you actually went to school somewhere else and went to LA and did like I'm a fan. I still hope at some point, maybe after our youngest is graduated, we'll actually sell and move and live in other places because it's like a lifelong dream. And I just
Yeah, I
imagine
mean,
like
it's never too
me as a
late.
book character of like, who would I be, right? In this
Mm,
different biome. Like, am I gonna be
yes.
a different person? Who am I gonna meet? Right. So, but yeah, it's not off the table yet. But um, there was a scene in your book. First of all, I thought that the characters in there were I was never really sure of how much, like, red herring you might be doing or, like, the unreliable narration. I was like, "Okay, something does not feel right to me here," so really love that. But there's a scene where they're down in some of these, like, catacombs, I guess is what I'd say, but they're not, but they're, like, underground tunnels, and I was, like,
Yes.
having some serious claustrophobia, and I just think that's a market of you just having a great writing with the setting and how everything's going because I was like, I'm really uncomfortable right now. And, as someone
Well,
who
go
is
me for making
claustrophobic.
you uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I really, really like that. And I felt like one of my favorite parts was, I guess people are always so like wowed by a Frida McFadden. And I'm like, dude, how did you not see that like this was the ending? Like I
Oh,
just
yeah,
feel like
interesting. I've only read
it's
one
like,
of her
wow,
books.
there's gonna be some wild ass twist and she's gonna figure out how to get and anyway, I just really liked that I couldn't guess exactly what was happening. I enjoyed it the whole way through. I didn't feel like I was like I probably think is that, and again, I think you did such a good job of disturbing, okay, can I actually trust this or what is happening here? So
Mm.
I feel like it made it for a really fun read.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yes,
I kind of also I think this is I don't know if you had a chance to read the afterword. I think it's been a while since I've looked at
I
that too.
didn't. I don't think I did for that.
Oh, okay. I think it's in there that in addition to like gothic novels, a bit of my other inspiration was the Scream film franchise, which like I could write a whole dissertation on why the Scream films are actually like they have like gothic story structure and all of the like insane, like especially the reveal of the killers. Everything is also like incestuous and intertwined and like bonkers on paper, but like they make it work. And so I just ran with that with the story where I was like, look, there can be like a
Oh my
cousin
gosh.
that looks like this one, and there can be like
Okay.
like
And then listeners, then you understand why I had a good time with it because I definitely, as you're saying this, my mouth's kind of dropped and I'm thinking, that's exactly what it felt like was, you're kind of going around in circles of I'm really not sure. And you keep ping ponging. I think you did that so well. But Also, at the same
Thanks.
time, I would still love to hear that dissertation at some
I
point
know I
because
should totally write it. At least an
I'm sa
essay of
I
some
really
sort.
I know. That is I think, for somebody who right, like, it sounds kinda crazy on paper, but they did make it work, and it
Yeah.
it was so fun.
And I'm dying to see what they come out. There's a new one coming out, and it's like Sydney and her daughter. I'm gonna be first in line at the theater.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
I I don't watch a lot of scary movies because I'm a weenie, like, I like to read scary books, but I actually do make a point to go to the movie theater to watch Scream
Oh, nice.
because
I
it's
love it.
just so fun,
Yes, I'm so excited.
and I just love how confusing it always gets. It's a ride, right?
It's like a horror soap
It
opera, which
is, it
is
is,
also what a gothic novel is, like a
and that's
melodramatic, romantic, gothic horror soap opera.
okay. That is perfection, and that is why I loved it. So, I do wanna make time to hear about the book in between, then I
Oh, yeah.
wanna close out with that, but the How to Fake a Haunting, I felt like had such good reception. I feel like I saw it all over my Instagram feed, but I had already, like, read it, and I was like, "Hell yeah, like, this book's getting the traction that it should."
Uh-huh.
So, did you feel like that it just kinda sprung out here and it was really nicely received, at least from a viewer's perspective, it seemed like it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not complaining. It's out there, people are reading it, that makes me very happy. Yeah,
It's
it
one of those books that, like, if it were a movie, like, I would be like if my girlfriend was come over, I'd be like, "We need to watch this together because it's definitely, like, female rage, like, and t so I want you to, like, set the scene for us here so that we can dig into talking about this because I absolutely loved it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I can talk about this one a lot more easily since it's just a couple months out. How to Fake a Haunting is about a woman named Lainey, and she is married to a man who is, the way I say it is, he's an alcoholic, but not on paper. So, like, he holds down a really good job. He's never gotten a DUI. From like all outside perspective, he looks to be like a great partner and a great father. So they have a child together. But on the inside, he's, like, ruining their lives. He is, like, absolutely an alcoholic. He's sort of holding the house hostage with his, shitty behavior and nonstop drinking, and Lainey wants to divorce him and get full custody of her daughter, but he has a very influential, connected family within Newport, Rhode Island, and she's basically been threatened by his family that if she tries to divorce him and go for full custody, she won't get any custody because 'cause they'll pull all the strings. So, as one does, she complains to her best friend, and as one does, she and her best friend come up with a bonkers plan and think outside the box and decide to fake a haunting so realistic and so, like, strategically progressing that it convinces him that the house really is haunted and that he will leave on his own. But then, of course, shenanigans ensue.
Well done. I think that I it just makes you wanna go, "Yeah, I need to read that again right now," and I just read it, like, September, October. So, I love that the best friend's like, "Bitch, what do you need? Like, what do we gotta do to get him
Yes,
out of
it
here?"
was very fun to write their relationship.
Because, I mean, genuinely, that's what it was. I mean, how many people have that relationship with their spouse where it's like, "Oh, you're so lucky you're married to him," and it's like, you don't understand that, like, they don't pick up any of the emotional labor, they don't do this, they don't do that, and it's like they're not violent, but they're also not helpful.
Yeah, that was a key point
It's
for
like
me is, like, I didn't wanna
mediocrity as a
go.
definition, right? Plus,
Yes.
then you add on the fact of, like, I don't wanna say he's a dry drunk, but, he has all the alcoholic behavior,
Right.
but also societally still fits in. So it's like and I feel like Lainey just is such a protective mother. I mean, she
Mm.
genuinely is like, "I'm terrified of this fucker," because he almost kills them, like,
Yeah.
in a car accident.
Yep.
And she's righteously angry, and as she should be, and it's like the manipulations that are coming down from this family that has money and just basically this touched near and dear to my spirit because I have a best friend
Mm.
who I think is the best mother in the whole world. Swears a lot, which I love, but I mean, can make anything, it's nothing for her to make everything from scratch. Has homeschooled when they've not been as a military family that they haven't had like
Oh,
good enough
wow.
schools for it. She's taught volleyball, volunteers more hours than anything else. She's put her own, master's degree, like just there for every class, for everything, talk Girl Scouts, just super hella involved. I
Mm,
can't think of really anything else that educate your husband's career to look good because when you volunteer for the military or whatever,
yeah.
and yet her in-laws are like, "She's not shit. And what are you
Ugh.
doing? And why don't you work?" And I just it makes me have a murderous rage. So if she asked me, which I'm pretty sure neither one of them is ever gonna listen to the podcast here, but,
Yeah,
uh,
well, just you have my permission to delete it and
nope,
erase all evidence if you need to. Like, if
if
this
I need to,
situation
okay.
changes and you need to, like, go stage some haunting
Yeah,
shit, you
but I'm
delete
like
this as evidence. No harm, no foul.
but I'm like, "What's wrong with you?" Like, you it makes me feel like it's the relationship of having being a boy mom, which I never wanted to be because
Hmm,
you're, like, obsessed with your son and your son can do no wrong, and it's like, where do you get off on just being so mean to their spouse? And I know there's a lot of
yeah.
women like that, and that's how I felt this family was
Yes.
described. So even though I'm not, like I don't want to kill her husband, that's not my point, but I would love to just have a go at it with her in-laws to be like,
Mm,
let's look at all these things on paper. Are you actually fairly evaluating this person? But nevertheless, it has been that thing of they have a lot of money, and she's been like, if you ever divorce our son, we'll make you pay for it, which is basically the
yeah,
premise of
that's
your book here. So
horrible.
I was engaged and enraged.
Well,
Okay.
also feel free, even if you just want to like freak them out, just to be, keep them on their toes. Feel free to use anything in the book as a playbook. I spent a lot of time
It was good stuff.
researching. A lot
It
of
was
people said to me,
really
they
good
were
stuff.
like, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you must not have had to do as much research for this book as you did for the other two." And I was like, "Oh, no, no, no. I still did a ton of research, but I researched like whether it was possible to stream pig's blood through shower lines. I researched like how to magnetize the bottom of candles and get them to shoot up to the ceiling. I researched how to unleash 1,000 flies into your home and potentially clean them all up again in the quickest time possible. I researched some gnarly, fun horror movie stuff.
I think gnarly is the word for that. It was so fun, like, watching when we talked about, like, the scream and just, like, how you make a amazing picture in your head and you're watching it unfold on screen. That's what it felt like to me in the book here, but they were, like, the orchestrators of how do we create this horror, and they were setting up sets and moments and the creativity that obviously you put into this, but I was reading it as the character. I mean, these ladies did not mess around. They were like,
No, they
"We are
went
on a
full on.
mission to
They
be
went,
successful, and the stakes are so high." Um, because basically when he almost kills them, the mother of the grandmother is just kinda like, "Well, he's not a bad," like, basically, like, I don't remember exactly, but, like, "He's not a bad driver. It's not really a big deal. Like, you really shouldn't be
right.
worried about this." And so, I mean, they're worried that their daughter, Lainey's daughter, like, her life is, truly in danger. So they have to pull out all the stops. So the amount
Yes.
of things that you imagine for this was so much fun, and the way he's like, "Holy shit, these things are happening." But then when you talk about things don't actually go according to plan and some
Right.
other crazy shit ensues, it was like, I felt like, "Whoa, what a twist. What a flip." And I don't think that I'm like basically they do such a good job of conjuring haunting things that things start actually happening, that they're not manufacturing. And that's where the fun in the book comes in because it's not within their control anymore.
Yes. Things go terribly out of control.
And I
Yeah,
was
and that's
kind of
where
like
things
at
got
the
really fun to write, to just go,
yeah.
like, full.
Well, I was gonna
There
say,
was no
like
more restraint from that point forward.
yeah. Well, I felt like it was like once it started, it was like boom, 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 like you didn't really let up. Like it was like hard to
Yes.
get a breath and I loved
Okay.
it.
So, I'm glad you said that because I did have a couple people kind of ask me, like, you sort of just be like, "I don't know if I loved the ending." Like, it just felt like it, and what they were talking about was like, I don't wanna spoil it, but when they were talking about the ending, they were talking about, like, that very last, like, 2 pages before the epilogue where Lainey makes a decision that will end things. And I was like, it's so weird to me. And of course, like, this is kind of a silly thing to say because after you write the book as the author, like, it's not yours anymore. It becomes the readers and it becomes like what they make of it. But to me, the quote unquote ending felt like the entire last third of the book. Like, it definitely felt like
Me
the
too.
last third of the book was like
Yes.
one big, like
Like one
Amityville, like
big
just the big
adventure.
horror
Yes.
climax that's gonna
Yes.
take you all the way through and it doesn't
Yes.
let up. There's like a very brief let up just because I needed to give them time to get the ghost hunters to come where they like spend the night, she spends the night in the yard in the tent and he spends the night in the car. But it is like a quick moment of like catch your breath and then it's back and I was like, "Oh, that's weird. You think the ending was just like 2 pages?" Cuz to
Nope,
me,
nope.
it's a
It
very
didn't leave.
long don't breathe ending. At least it was for
Yep.
me to write it. Again, how
No, it
people take it
felt
afterwards
I'm
is
I'm not I'm going to support what you're saying is that it felt to me very cinematic
Oh,
and
thank you.
exactly that where you go into that section where it's like, "Now watch this movie just fucking let loose for the next
Right,
20 minutes,"
right.
and you're like and you're invested, and that's what it felt like to me, and I love that part where, you're saying you do give it a second for that, but no, it was like the last third of the book, and it was like maybe just watching everything unspool. I was
Yeah,
like,
it's
"My
like the
god."
point where there's no more jump scares, it's just the real scares. It's like
Yes,
now everything is the
yes,
real deal. There's
yes.
no more like quick camera cut and then it's gone. It was
Mhm,
behind their shoulder, but now it's gone.
mhm.
It's like no, it's all still here. You got to just
Yeah, I feel like when we started talking about your level of tenacity, I think it came out in Lainey's character. I
oh,
think you
that's
put some of
fun.
that
I
in
like
there
that.
because there was like when you're saying like I'm not going to quit, I don't give up. That's what I feel like I could see that like that you did you feel like you put some of yourself in there?
Yeah, I would say I think that I know some people are like, "No, I don't, I sometimes pieces of myself get into characters, but some characters are like nothing of me." I mean, I feel like it's impossible not to put especially main characters. Like maybe, a side character is a little bit easier to keep it very separate, but yeah, when I spend that long digging into somebody's psyche and thinking about how they would react to certain scenarios, of course I'm trying to keep it like a what am I trying to say? I'm trying to keep it faithful to the character, but there's definitely going to be a little bit of like, well, like what would I do and do I keep that or
Mhm.
do I spin it a little or maybe it's the complete opposite. But even being the complete opposite, there has to be something there for comparison in
Yeah.
myself. So, yeah, there's pieces.
I felt like her ferocity of motherhood really came through strong and I was so surprised how she could be so angry and protective, but also then when she spoke to her daughter, she was able to just like not let the cat out of the bag. I'm like, what level of self control you have to not be like, your
Oh,
father's a
I
piece
like
of
that.
shit,
Yeah.
you know? Because with the level of where she's fed up, and just that duality that a mother has to live where it's like
Mm,
you have to hide all that from your children. And I don't think that that's something that we all do well or, we don't make, that we make mistakes with or whatever. Obviously, we're human and it's easy for that to be perfect in a book. But I just felt like seeing how she's basically like living one life with her daughter and, trying to set the stage for that so she can do all these things while also just being absolutely miserable. And, I know there's the whole thing about pink horror where
mm,
it taps into it. And I don't feel that your book is presented as that. But if anybody does like feminist or female rage of things that I think a lot of people have lived through that of just like the men that feel like they're babysitting their children or they're
mm,
doing enough or they've done just this or I don't beat her so it's okay, that level of just mediocrity. I apparently have
yeah.
a lot of friends that just feel like their spouse is the shit or their spouse feels that way, not them, right? And
Right.
I see these women out here doing this, so I felt like this was such a relatable moment for a lot of women that either are like, "Okay, I wish I had never married this man," or "They turned out different than I thought," or "I wish I
Mm,
could have a divorce," and the stakes are so high, whether it's I can't afford to live on my own or whatever it is, so,
right,
I mean,
right.
I think there's a lot of women that would like, "How do I get out of this?" And certainly how to fake a haunting. Haunting is not the exact thing that is employed, but that's why I think it's so fun, so I wonder even with the options of, as they're saying, the potential for the no at fault divorce being taken away. Are we gonna see more women taking things into their own hands? Or will we see
Yeah.
poisoning having a
I know
resurgence or
yeah, it is like the it's like the I don't know, 21st century. Yeah, I mean, Right, like, women back then would poison their husbands, now their last resort is haunting them out of the house, and, it's funny because some people early on, like, playing devil's advocate, like, agent beta readers, they were like, "You have to make it so that" and I even myself knew this right off the rip coming up with the idea. I knew that, like, okay, so I knew that there had to be no other option for her, but at the same time, that didn't seem like a really high bar to have to reach because, I mean, women like,
Do that
exactly
all the
like you
time.
just said, right, there's okay, I'm gonna come at this from a different way. I was worried that anybody picking up this book and reading it would have picked it up and potentially been like, this is the dumbest concept ever. We live in 2025. Any woman that wants a divorce can get a divorce. This is dumb." And very quickly, so I wrote the book thinking I need to put enough in there where nobody can really think that. Like and that's where kind of like the influential family where she really does feel trapped. But at the same time, I think it does relate. I think a lot of women can relate to it or spouses, maybe regardless of gender, but if somebody holds more of a power differential. I mean, I didn't go the full physical, psychological. I mean, there's a bit of psychological, but I didn't go the full physical abuse route because I just didn't want to go there.
I think it made it better though, because it's like it leaves it in that
A
gray
little more
area.
gray
How
area, right,
how
exactly.
terrible is this? But I
But
also
when you think of physical abuse victims, where you could say the same thing about that, like, "Oh, we have
yes,
laws to support these people. We have laws to"
exactly.
and but women can't access them all the time. So
No,
saying the same thing about, "Oh, you can just get a divorce, it should be easy."
it isn't.
Regardless of it being 2026, that's not the case.
Not at all. I also feel like, and maybe you could shed light upon this, but don't you think it would be I felt like Lainey had some fun
Oh,
doing this.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
some satisfaction, like, sure, you could get a lawyer and say, "I wanna have this divorce," but didn't
Right.
he
No, there's a
deserve
bit of
some of
glee
these
there.
things? Didn't he deserve taunting and having some of this? I mean, I felt like that came through too of just, this was a lot this was playing the long game to get what she wanted, but also making it work the best for her while she got everything she needed, and I really plus you're having a great bonding time with your best friend.
Yeah. No, I've definitely felt like after everything she had been through, there would definitely have been a drive there to be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna enjoy this a little bit. I'm gonna dish it back." You've been basically torturing me for
Yeah,
several
you deserve to be
years.
scared,
You're
like, you
gonna
literally
be
put my life in danger all the time, and you're holding my life captive. How does it feel, fucker?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
how it feel like it
exactly.
came out, I loved it.
I
Uh,
love that you loved it.
I did. It was a level of unfortunately, I hate even saying that I have so many friends that are just I can relate to. They've had relationships like this over the years or, they've moved on, but it sits with you, it becomes a form of that, and I think that when you have a character that you can identify like this, you're rooting for them because you can see where that goes. So, um, it is really I think anyone who has that expectation that it's just so easy to live, it's like, okay, then you've never been a woman or you don't understand the complexities of life and relationships. There's a
Yeah,
lot of
nothing is
nuance and it
that
is not
easy.
black and white.
Right.
Also, I heard someone say this the other day and I was like, this is wild. But they were saying it was a female woman on female woman. Yeah, female and woman is the same thing. It was a female talking to the camera saying, I wonder if Jesus was a woman, if people would actually be as surprised by the things that he did because
Mm,
women do those things all the time. Women always are gonna figure out how to stretch a meal and feed their kids, and
mm,
women are always gonna be self-sacrificing and just I don't think she was trying to put down religion in any way, but just showing how there's something to the sacrificial level of a woman and a mother, and I don't think you have to even biologically have children. I think it could be that, you just have this nature inside of you of protection, whether it's
yeah.
for your friends or your neighbors or pets or whatever it is. It's that injustice and it's marked and you can see it and that level of protection of, even that like I think of that Big Bird meme where it's like we ride at dawn.
Yeah.
I just think
Yes.
that's women where it's like if we need to get something done, we're gonna fucking do it. And unabashed about it and support one another. And I love that. So it doesn't come off as like this angry rage thing, but it's simmering, right? It's like a hot take of, or it's like a very hot beverage, just
Mm,
short of boiling for me. It's like it's there. The temperature's really high. It's not at the level of, like, man-hating or anything like that, but it's just at a level of I think that you will, as a listener, and when you read this book or if you have read it, you'll say, "I know men like this. I know
mm,
women in situations like this." It's incredibly relatable.
yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes. So, as we're getting closer here, I would love to hear a little bit about the book that I never got to read yet because I do need to add to my TBR. And then I would like to
Yeah.
hear about anything that you're working on currently coming up and anything else we can look forward to.
Absolutely. So the second book is called Beneath the Poet's House, and it is set on Benefit Street in Providence, Rhode Island, at the home of the once home of Sarah Helen Whitman. She lived there. She was a poet in the 1800s who lived in this home during the time that she was courted by Edgar Allan Poe, and she and he were briefly engaged. And so the story is modern, set modern times. It's a woman who moves to 88 Benefit Street and lives in the house that Sarah Helen Whitman lived in after the woman moves there after her husband passed away. And she meets this trio of friends that kind of like give her some more history of the house and its former occupants. And she also meets a man and starts a relationship with him and finds as the relationship progresses that there are some really strange parallel between their relationship and Sarah Helen Whitman and Edgar Allan Poe. And then you find out why. Yeah, it kind of takes like a dark turn in the two-thirds mark as well, obviously, right? That's like what I do.
Look, this is what I'm looking forward to, okay? You don't I love that. Everything, every word you've said, I'm like, "Yes," immediately bumping that up, will be
Well,
purchasing.
thanks.
Yeah, because, I mean, I love that. I love that it's based off of these characters and the amount of research that probably went into this too, but also modernizing and creating that, new fiction out of it. It sounds so fun.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I
Well,
I love the book. I don't know that I think it's so funny, and please don't like take this the wrong way because I'm not. This is not like it seems very much like Daughters of Black Island and How to Fake a Haunting have gotten a level of recognition, and Beneath the Poet's House is like my poor middle child and doesn't really like get noticed as much,
yeah,
but
I was like,
I
I
have
never
love
even
for her.
when you said, like, "Hey, I'm gonna tell you what," I'm like, "Okay, I've definitely not heard that name." Like, I've not
Yeah,
even heard it,
it's
so I'm sorry. But
no,
I'm
don't,
hoping
but
that we
that's what I
can
mean. Don't be sorry. It's kind of, I mean, it's like the my publisher had a little bit, I mean, I think it says on the cover, yeah, it's Beneath the Poet's House, a thriller, and they were a little unsure of, like, how to categorize it because it's definitely I mean, I think it's a lot like Daughters of Black Island in that there are thriller elements, but
yes,
to me, it's definitely, I mean, I feel like
still the
I
Gothic.
write nothing but horror, that's where my heart lies, and whether people find, like, thriller elements or, like, suspense or mystery, I mean, that's all in there too, and
Yeah,
I'm also of the opinion that, like, call it whatever you want, I don't care, but, yeah, I think it's, dark and gothic as well, and,
well,
yeah, a little bit of, like, effed up romance for some of it too. It's a bit of a mixed bag, hopefully in a good
like
way.
it, like it. So, basically, coming full circle here, like, you have really leaned into your Shirley Jackson hard.
So when we talk about what I have coming out, I'm probably gonna have to stick to, like, short stories and anthologies. Actually, I don't even know if I can say
It's okay.
anything
You
about
don't
anything,
Okay,
but
we can't say it, but you're doing some shit and good stuff's coming.
I will tell you, so I was working, this is the first that I've said this, you're the first to hear this, and
Yay.
it kind of sounds like a bummer and like it should be sad news, but it's actually, like, really awesome unexpectedly. So I have been working on a project for the last year that was kind of similar to Beneath the Poet's House in that with, like, the Edgar Allan Poe thing, in that it, like, featured a historical character set in modern or even a little bit near future, not far near future, like, couple years. Um, and it was sort of body horror, sci-fi, like, artifact chase was how I was calling it, like, think like Da Vinci Code artifact chase where it was, so it was this, like, weird mashup, and I'd been working on it for a year, and it just kinda I don't even know what to say. It just was I don't wanna say it wasn't working, but, like, I kinda had, like, a regroup with my agent, and it just didn't feel like the right follow-up for it didn't feel right for the progression, like,
Okay,
from
sure.
Daughters of Black Island to Beneath the Poet's House to How to Fake a Haunting. This book felt like a weird almost going backwards, not whatever.
Okay.
So I have pivoted very recently to a new project that in, like, a very short period of time has, like, drastically upstaged the last project in terms of, like, my enthusiasm for it and, like, the flow
Wonderful.
of things and, like, the ease of the story coming out. I've
Wow.
got, like, the whole I don't usually outline, and it's not really an outline, but I know the intent like, I know
You
exactly
know
where
where you're going.
everything's going, and I will say it's very sure like, it's you were like, you're sticking to your Shirley Jack I mean, it's like New England folk
Love it.
horror,
Love it.
very much
Love it.
in the spirit of her.
Well, I'm so excited for you in the fact that even if you had to shelve something or pause, I
Yeah, I
do
think
believe
it's a
that
great way to put it, shelved.
ideas yeah, I think ideas I always go back to the Elizabeth Gilbert book, Big Magic, where she
Mm,
talks about ideas want to be born at certain
mm,
times, and I just am a big believer in that, and the fact that you're saying that this new thing is just coming out with intensity and flow and
yes,
ease and just then it's time for this. So, you
yes.
know, great. I'm already excited. I hope you'll come back on the show
I would love to.
when you're ready to. And where can we find you
I think
on
I mean, I have
socials?
a
And
website that's pretty easy because it's just, ChristaCarmen.com, and that's a great landing page for all my social media, but other than that, I mean, you can find me at Facebook, Instagram, a little bit over at Blue Sky, and I do have a Substack that I've been woefully neglecting, and I
oh
should
yeah,
probably put
that's
a
okay.
newsletter out.
I'll tell you the socials. You could have a full time job doing
Oh
your
my
own.
god, I got so burnt out after How to Fake a Haunting came out. I did, like, 20 events in 2 months, as well as an insane amount of, like
Oh
I
my
said yes
word.
to every podcast, every interview, every guest article. I was
Oh my
putting out a
gosh.
Substack, like, every couple weeks, and then Thanksgiving hit, and I just, like, shut down, and I was just like, "I can't
Excuse me while I
look
go have my
at
little
social
mental bee,
media."
right? I need to reach out,
Yes.
need to hibernate. Yeah.
Yes,
So,
hibernate for sure.
um, speaking of events, will you be going to any shows or events like coming up through this year?
Yeah, I do have I should probably like get better at knowing what ones are coming up next. I will be at Dark Reads in Providence on March
Nice.
28th,
Oh,
and I will be at StokerCon in
okay.
Pittsburgh, and I
We'll
will
see you there.
be awesome. That's so exciting. And I will be at the Spooktastic event in Boston
We'll see you
in
there too.
is that September? This is when I
It
have to
is.
get yeah,
Yep,
perfect.
mid-September. Yes,
Awesome.
and I love like because she had it in Framingham last year, so I'm really excited to see what it is in
Yeah,
actually
me
in
too.
Boston, and
I'm always up for going to Boston. It's a good time.
yeah, well, I just finished the arc for The Astral Library by Kate Quinn, and it all takes place in the
Mm.
Boston Public Library.
Oh,
So
nice.
so now I'm like, "I've got to go. I need to check out this reading room and everything she's talked about for it." But, yeah, I loved it, I was there a long time ago, like, at 16 years old, so I haven't been to Boston in a long time, so but Alyssa throws the best events. I mean, I think the difference between Stoker of how party, 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 and you need like a vacation from Stoker itself
Yes.
to Alyssa's event is so organized and just wonderful, like tight knit community. And it's just, she has the best authors, that show up as well. And so she has a great list of
Yes.
new and returning. So I look forward to seeing you not once, but twice.
Yes, that's so exciting. We'll have to get, a
Yes,
meal, a coffee, a chat, a
absolutely.
hug, all the things.
Yes, 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 yes. Awesome. Well, please reach out for anything you need. We'll continue to support, but I've loved both those, and I'll give you my feedback then too as I read Under the Post House. I'm really looking forward to
Thank
reading that.
you. Thanks
All
so
right.
much, and this was lovely.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Thanks so
having
much
me.
for your time. Okay. Have a good night. Bye
You
bye.
too. Bye.